heard the delicate trembling of the chandelier before her words reached me. A soft, crystalline ringing above the dining table just as my mother leaned forward and declared, "We're only inviting you out of pity, so don't overstay your welcome." Forks froze mid-air. My sister wore a smug smirk. My brother continued to swirl the amber liquid in his glass, acting as if the barb was directed at anyone but me. A flush crept up my neck, yet my hand remained steady as I raised my wine glass. I offered a tight smile, took a small, measured sip, and rose from the table. No one attempted to stop me. No one even bothered to look up. Yet, in a mere 2 weeks, they all would. Before I continue this narrative, I need to know if there's anyone out there who has ever endured words that cut this deep. If you have, then follow me, because this story veered sharply from the path they anticipated. Hello, I'm Lotus, the second turkey in the story you've just begun. As a child, the cabin nestled on Lake Marlowe's shore was the only sanctuary where I felt substantial, not invisible. Before sunrise, my grandfather would escort me to the weathered dock. The lake, a flawless sheet of silver, patiently awaited the dawn. He'd place a fishing rod in my small hands, his grip steady and reassuring, while the air carried the sharp, clean scent of wet pine. At night, we'd sit beside a crackling fire, my fingers sticky with the sugary residue of burnt marshmallows, the old cedar chest beside us, holding the deed he always referred to as ours. One day, he confided, "This will be yours to protect." I clung to those words as if they were a sacred vow. But after his passing, the cabin was irrevocably altered. My parents quietly absorbed it into what they termed the family place, despite the fact that the title remained solely in my name. Summer excursions were arranged in group chats from which I was always excluded until the plans were already set in stone. Photographs from those idyllic weekends began to appear in frames throughout the house, my brother posing heroically on the dock, feigning the catch of an enormous fish. My sister wrapped in a cozy blanket on the porch, looking effortlessly charming. My parents beamed, radiating the pride of having built the entire scene themselves. I was conspicuously absent from every single image. I learned early on that in my family, attention wasn't shared. It was meticulously allocated. My brother was the golden child, the embodiment of success. My sister was the darling, the one everyone adored. And I was the utility player, the extra pair of hands, always available but never truly seen. When I made the honor roll, no one attended the ceremony. When I juggled 2 jobs to afford community college, my mother used me as a cautionary example. Make better choices than Lotus. It was never overtly malicious, never a shouting match, just a gradual, persistent etching of my assigned role. The night they forgot to set a place for me at dinner. The birthday when only my grandfather remembered. The day a teacher called to celebrate a scholarship I'd won, and my parents replied, "We weren't even aware she applied." There was one summer when I dared to voice my feelings. They were orchestrating yet another weekend at the cabin, and I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I'd like to come too." My mother didn't even glance up from her notes. "All the rooms are taken," she stated flatly. "Maybe next year." My brother snorted derisively. My sister remained engrossed in her phone. I stood there, clutching a bag of groceries, snacks they had specifically requested I pick up, including the lantern someone deemed essential. No one noticed when I quietly set the bag down and walked away. Looking back, I believe that was the day I fully grasped the silence they expected from me, and I learned how to survive within its confines. 2 nights after the dinner party, my phone illuminated on the kitchen counter while I was rinsing a coffee mug. The screen flashed with notifications from the family group chat photos, logistical plans, endless threads of messages I hadn't bothered to open in months. I dried my hands on a dish towel and glanced at the message previews. They were arranging the annual summer pilgrimage to the cabin. My brother sent a photo of a fancy new outdoor grill he was eager to install. My sister suggested coordinated family t-shirts for the obligatory porch photos. My mother composed lengthy paragraphs detailing guest room assignments, grocery lists, and seating arrangements. My name wasn't mentioned even once, not as a guest, not even as a dismissive footnote. It was like watching a play from which I'd been completely excised, yet somehow remained listed in the credits for legal reasons. I tapped the screen, scrolling silently through the barrage of messages. "All the bedrooms are taken. Lotus doesn't really come anyway. We'll just use her key if she forgets to drop it off." Her key. As if she merely possessed access. As if I didn't own the very ground beneath their feet. A small envelope icon materialized at the top of the screen. Another bank email, the kind I usually disregarded. I opened it on instinct. It was a reminder regarding a joint account I had no recollection of establishing. My name appeared directly beside my mother's, highlighted in bold. At the bottom, a note detailed automatic property tax payments for the cabin, linked to my profile. Payments I had never authorized. I stared at the screen, the kitchen suddenly too still. The refrigerator emitted a low hum. A car passed by outside. My breath felt constricted, as if the air had thickened and become heavy in my lungs. I wasn't simply overlooked. I wasn't just the perpetual spare guest. I was a name they invoked whenever official paperwork demanded a responsible party. I placed the phone face down on the table. The vibration of incoming messages buzzed against the wood, rattling slightly, like something desperately trying to claw its way back into my attention. I resisted the urge to pick it up. Instead, I sank into the chair by the window, drew my knees up to my chest, and watched the city lights flicker against the glass. Dish towels hung askew on the counter. A stack of unopened mail leaned precariously against the fruit bowl. Everything appeared frozen in time, paused, waiting. I closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them, a sense of resolve settled within me. Not anger, not even sorrow, just crystal clear clarity. I smiled, a small, quiet, almost imperceptible curve of my lips. The kind of smile no one in that group chat would ever detect. But they soon would. The morning after the fateful group chat, I awoke before my alarm. The apartment was shrouded in a muted gray light that softened every edge and quieted every sound. I secured my hair with the elastic I habitually wore on my wrist, padded barefoot into the kitchen, and started the coffee maker. The rhythmic drip of coffee filled the silence like a steady metronome. I sat at the small wooden table, its surface scarred with old coffee rings and the faint scratches of years of work. I opened my notebook, the same one I used for my freelance projects, and turned to a fresh page. The pen felt heavier than usual in my hand, but the words flowed effortlessly. Sell the cabin. Close joint accounts. Call lawyer about the estate. 3 lines. Concise, simple, resolute. A plan born from silence. I took a sip of coffee, then pulled open the metal filing cabinet. It groaned with its familiar protest, the sound scraping through the room. Inside were years of accumulated documents, old bank statements, tax correspondence, utility bills, the kind of detritus most people would have long discarded. I had meticulously kept everything, not out of sentimentality, but as a form of self-preservation. Near the back, nestled inside a faded envelope, I found the deed to the cabin. The paper was slightly yellowed with age, still carrying the faint, nostalgic scent of cedar from my grandfather's chest. I placed it carefully on the table, smoothing the edges with my palm. At 7:14 a.m., I called Dan. He answered groggily, his voice thick with sleep. "Lotus, is everything all right?" "I need to sell the cabin," I stated. No hesitation, just quiet, unwavering efficiency. A pause stretched between us, long enough for me to imagine him sitting up straighter in bed, forcing himself awake. "The one by Lake Marlowe?" "Your grandparents'." "Yes. I thought your parents used it." "They do," I replied, "but they don't own it." Another pause, a subtle shift in tone. The kind that occurs when someone realizes the ground beneath them is not as solid as they believed. "All right," he said slowly. "Send me everything you have. I'll draft the paperwork." We hung up. I scanned the deed page by page, the soft hum of the scanner momentarily filling the otherwise quiet kitchen. I sent the files to Dan with a brief message, then moved on to the next item on my list, joint accounts. I logged into the bank portal, the cool blue light of the laptop screen illuminating my face. My name appeared in connections I hadn't anticipated: co-signer on an ancient checking account, secondary on a credit line, linked to automatic payments for the cabin's property taxes. I clicked through each one, meticulously reading the fine print, the dates, the signatures. Some stretched back years. Close account. Remove name. Disable autopay. Each action produced a soft clicking sound, like the faint toppling of distant dominoes. I took notes as I progressed, marking completed tasks with small check marks in my notebook. At one point, my phone buzzed with a text message from my sister. "Mom's planning the trip. Are you coming or not?" I allowed the message to fade from the screen without opening it. By noon, I had closed 4 accounts, removed myself from 3 others, and canceled every automatic payment tied to my name. The silence in the apartment felt different now. Not empty, but deliberate. Controlled. Next, I drafted an email to Harris, my parents' estate lawyer. I kept it concise and formal. Hello. I would like to schedule a time to review all documents related to the family estate and ensure my rights are properly represented. Please advise on your availability. Regards, Lotus. I read it twice, then clicked send. Another buzz from my phone. This time, a voicemail alert. Likely my mother, though she hadn't contacted me directly in weeks. I chose not to listen to it just yet. Instead, I cleared the table, arranging the papers into a single, organized pile. I slid them into a folder and placed it on the counter. The apartment felt sharper, as if the edges of things had come into focus. The plan wasn't fueled by emotion. It wasn't accompanied by raised voices. It didn't need to be. It was procedural, precise, and undeniably my own. Around 3 p.m., Dan texted, "Got the deed. Everything checks out. Starting the listing quietly. We'll send updates as offers come in." I replied with a simple thank you. As the afternoon faded into early evening, I sat by the window with a fresh cup of coffee. The city hummed and pulsed below me, cars, voices, the wind pushing gently against the glass. I observed it all with a stillness I hadn't felt in years. They had spent so long treating me like a name, they could freely use a space, they could fill a signature they could borrow. And I, in turn, had played along. I had remained silent. But this time, the silence was mine. I closed my notebook, placed my pen on top of it, and took a slow, deliberate breath. This time, I wouldn't attempt to fix what they had broken. 2 weeks elapsed before anything happened. Long enough for the silence to settle into my apartment like a second layer of paint. I worked, cooked simple meals, answered emails, and watched the city unfold outside my window. Nothing dramatic, just time passing, as it always does quietly, until something inevitably breaks. The first crack appeared early one morning. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed with a message from Dan. Offer came in. Cash buyer. Closing soon. Funds will transfer directly to your account. I reread the words, not out of disbelief, but because they felt strangely impersonal, as if I were reading about someone else's life. I texted back a single word, approved, Naim, and set the phone aside. By noon, the cabin was gone. I didn't directly inform anyone, but they soon discovered the truth. That evening, my sister initiated a string of messages to the family group chat. They came in rapid succession, as if she were frantically typing while pacing. Did someone change the lock code at the cabin? Mom's freaking out. Dad says the realtor sign wasn't there last week. Lotus, what did you do? I refrained from opening the thread. I merely watched the previews accumulate on my lock screen, each one more desperate than the last. An hour later, my mother called 3 times. Then she resorted to voicemail. Asterisk Lotus, this is not funny. Call me back immediately. Then another. Asterisk. You had no right. This isn't just your decision. Call me now. And another. Her voice cracking. Asterisk. Lotus, please, you're scaring me. Call me back. I didn't. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching the voicemail counter steadily climb like a ticking clock. For the first time, their panic wasn't something they could conceal behind polite words or carefully modulated tones. It was raw, unfiltered, honest. Then came the bank statements. My mother texted a photo, blurry and tilted, but I could still discern the red notification alerts. Namrud joint account closed. Credit line suspended. Property tax autopay failed. Secondary signature removed. She didn't include a message with the photo. She didn't need to. The image conveyed everything. Within minutes, my brother called. Then again, and again. I allowed each ring to fade into the silence of the room, like a distant, unheeded alarm. Finally, he sent a single, terse message. What the hell is going on? I placed the phone face down, the vibration rattling lightly against the wood. The apartment felt smaller, more confining, as if the air had become thick and viscous. The city outside seemed muted, as if holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. Then came the moment I had been anticipating. A soft thud outside my door. A pause, followed by the insistent buzz of the intercom. I pressed the talk button. "It's Dad, open up." His voice lacked the commanding tone I had grown up with. It sounded strange, a mixture of anger and uncertainty. I buzzed him in and stepped back, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. The door swung open with force, slamming against the stop with a sharp crack. My father stood there, breathing heavily, his face flushed. He surveyed the apartment, slowly taking in the mismatched furniture, the cramped kitchen, the papers stacked neatly on the table. "Is it true?" he demanded. "Did you sell the cabin?" I kept my voice even. "Yes." "You closed the accounts, removed your name from everything?" "Yes." His jaw tightened. "Do you understand what you've done?" I nodded once, deliberately. He exhaled a long, shaky breath, like someone realizing a door had been irrevocably shut from the other side. "All right," he said quietly. "You've made your point." I straightened. "No, I haven't. Not yet." He looked at me, then really looked at me. And in that instant, the power dynamic shifted. Not with a bang, not with dramatic pronouncements, just a quiet, undeniable tilt. A small envelope sat on the counter beside me. Dan's letter. I slid it toward him. "A lawyer's letter is on its way," I stated. "You should read it." His expression didn't visibly change, but something in his posture seemed to collapse, like a building losing a critical support beam. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He simply turned, opened the door, and walked out. And for the first time in years, the silence he left behind felt entirely mine. The morning after my father's visit to the apartment dawned unusually bright. Sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains in quiet, slanted lines, illuminating the table where the last of the paperwork remained stacked in a neat pile. The room was still, save for the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft drip of the coffee maker completing its brewing cycle. I moved slowly, almost deliberately, as if the air itself carried a new weight. I poured coffee into my chipped mug, wrapped both hands around it for warmth, and stood by the window. The city bustled below, cars merging, people crossing streets, a dog eagerly tugging its owner toward the park. Ordinary things, steady things, things that didn't require my permission or my presence. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message preview appeared. "Mom wants to apologize. Can we talk? We didn't know things were this bad. Please answer." I didn't touch the phone. I allowed the screen to dim on its own, the apartment returning to its soft quiet. I sat at the table, tracing the rim of my mug with one finger. The folder of documents was now closed, the deed to the cabin no longer mine. The accounts were detached from my name, and the legal letter was already moving through the system. These things were no longer symbols. They were decisions, completed actions. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel suspended between obligation and resentment. I felt grounded, like someone standing on their own porch after a storm, listening to the world breathe again. A flicker of memory surfaced the cabin at dusk, the lake turning copper as the sun dipped behind the trees. My grandfather's voice, low and steady, urging me to protect what was mine. I had tried to honor that for years. In the end, protecting it didn't mean clinging to it. It meant releasing the place where I had once belonged but no longer did. I closed my eyes for a moment and inhaled deeply. The air carried the scent of coffee, old wood, and the morning light warming the floor. When I opened my eyes again, everything felt clear. Not lighter, not heavier, just honest. The silence in the room wasn't the kind they had forced upon me, it was the kind I chose. I didn't cut them off entirely. I simply stopped signing my name beneath their chaos. Some endings don't involve dramatic slams. They settle, like dust after a long breath, like a door easing shut on its own accord. And if you've ever reclaimed your quiet, even once, you recognize the sound it makes. It isn't loud. It isn't angry. It's the soft click of a life finally belonging to you. If you've lived through something similar, let your voice be heard. Share what has remained silent for the longest time. Your story might be the reminder someone else needs to choose themselves.